Hey, it's Jeremy Piven here, and you are watching the whole podcast.
Welcome to the Hole. I am Rob Sprance.
And I'm Lori Levine.
Very honored to be joined by New York Ranger legend Ron Duguay. Thanks for joining us, Ron.
Good to be with you. I love talking to New Yorkers. I love talking to those who are big fans of the game. And of course, if you're a fan of the Rangers or the Islanders or the Devils, it doesn't matter as long as you're a hockey fan. And of course, I love talking to those who have seen my what I went through as a New York Ranger back in the 70s and 80s. Always good stories. Life is different now as a hockey player, and it's different in the NHL. But there's always a lot to talk about, especially when you're comparing the past to today.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the kind of the things that I want to get into. So, I've seen you play. I think it was the last year that you were a Ranger. I think it was the last one, because at the time, we would go and sit in the blue seats. It was all we can afford. And we even had moments where back then they didn't scan your tickets. So you used to be able to take a stub and take $20 and fold it and hand it to the usher, and they would just take it and just let you in. And then you would go to the blue seats and sit where you want to sit. So, when you're a kid, that's your way in to go watch the games at the time.
Was it really that wild that Up on the Blue Seats? Because as you know, I have a podcast and it's called Up on the Blue Seats. It's the regular folks,
right?
But it's not the same anymore. That regular folk has become a businessman in a suit and tie, and they're not as rowdy, and there's not any fights up there anymore.
Yeah.
But I think we're talking about 1987, 88, and it was still quite of excitement up there.
It was.
And it was entertaining for us because I can remember sitting on the bench looking up, and there'd be, especially if we're playing against the Islanders, there'd be brawls up there, and it was like, wow.
Yeah. No, it was crazier up there for sure. And I think because a lot of people were just, heavily drunk back up in that section as well. I do remember that there was just a lot of, it was a lot of us versus them, meaning at the time at the Garden too, it was red, green, yellow, blue. Like there was, there were red seats, there were green seats, there were yellow seats and blue. And the blue were the cheap seats. And there were even chants, I'm sure you've heard them, red seats suck, green seats suck, depending on whatever was happening in any other. But yeah, there was a us versus the other sections kind of mentality, and I'm sure it was a chip on our shoulder because any of us would have given anything to sit in any one of those seats down there. But it was a little crazier up there for sure. The fights did break out a lot more. Although the Ranger Islander games, the fights happened more at Nassau Coliseum, I thought, when I went to those games, because it was very tight when you sat down. It was just it was a great place to see a game, but man, there was a lot of brawls on those.
Yeah, well, you know what? This is all new to me because I didn't know it, because I would hear Pot Bay sucks, but right. I wouldn't hear one section against the other. That's all new to me. And I maybe understand why there was more fights on the Island than there was at the Garden, because I think the Islander fans wouldn't dare come to the Garden, get too rowdy, where the Ranger fans would go to the Coliseum, and they went there in big numbers, because sometimes it'd be half the building. We would score a goal and we're like, wow, we feel like we're at the Garden right now, because there were so many Ranger fans.
Yeah, very, very true. And I want to talk about how you got to this point, because when you were here, and we'll touch on that too, but when you were in New York, like, you made a big splash on this city. I'd argue that you were probably the first Ranger that really became a household name back in that time, because the hockey players, the fans knew, but you kind of transcended that, where you really became one of the faces of New York at the time. So, go ahead.
Well, I think it was just the timing of it. It was 1977. The city there was a mix of, it felt a little dangerous, but there was a wildness to it. Times Square was red lights and a lot of funny things going on. So it was a little bit of everything. So it was a fun, odd time. And of course, in 1977 was the grand opening of Studio 54.
Right.
And so I think Studio 54 really brought a lot of excitement to the city. I'm not sure if you look back if it's something they needed, if the city needed something like that, but I was right there at the beginning of it. And I didn't shy away from having fun, taking advantage of all the things that the city would offer, as long as I felt like I was playing well. And so one thing kind of led to another. It wasn't a timing thing for me. It wasn't like a thing where I got to get as much exposure as I can by doing certain things. I knew that my work was my work. And if I play well, hard, and I work hard, that doors would open up to me. And of course, the big doors of Studio 54 open up. And then from there, you meet a lot of celebrities. And I think what really drew me to a different level as far as popularity was, I met Andy Warhol. And all the people around him, Liza Minnelli, Cher, I mean, you name it. The list goes on. And I got good friends with him, and he wanted to do something different. He wanted to put an athlete on the cover of his magazine, which he's put others, but he put me on the cover of Interview magazine. And once that happened, I think that's when, and of course I'm scoring some goals. And so one thing kind of lined up and added up to me become very popular. And people tell me that I was very recognizable on the ice because, I'm a little bigger, big hair, going around, skating fast, and I played to the crowd. I understood early that it wasn't me just playing hockey. It was me performing as an athlete, but also as an entertainer. And you're at Madison Square Garden. It doesn't get any bigger than that. Now, I wasn't told any of this. It's just whatever came out of me.
Mm-hmm. Now, you're being a little modest because you're also an incredibly handsome guy, too. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I know this is because I had a crush on a girl in class in school, and all she would talk about is Ron Duguay, Ron Duguay, Ron Duguay, Ron Duguay, all the time. So, it wasn't just about that. And yes, you were. And here's an image of you. And here's you playing without a helmet when they started to phase in helmets. And
which Ron just explained to me that helmets were not mandatory then. No. Which is crazy.
Yeah, I played into the last year. 1977 was the last year. The following year was mandatory for any player coming into the NHL. And so I was grandfathered in. And because I started playing without one, and I enjoyed playing without one, I didn't feel or see the danger. Well, you could see the danger, but I didn't think of the danger. So I just continued playing without a helmet, as many guys did. Phil Esposito was on the team, played with him for a few years. So there's, most of the guys didn't wear a helmet, and most of the league didn't wear a helmet. And I think that when you ask people about the game then and now, where we were all very unique in our own way. We all had our own hairstyle, facial hair, and skated differently, and the game was different back then. And so people ask me now, if I was to play today, would I play without a helmet? Yeah, I would probably go on the ice and play without a helmet.
Yeah, you still would anyway. I mean, it's just something that, you grew up playing. So you grew up in Sudbury, right, in Ontario. So about as far from the lights in New York City as you can possibly imagine. And now you wind up, so you're drafted like 13th overall, right, by New York right away.
Yes, and so Sudbury's a mining town. And how does that prepare you for New York? None of it. The only thing that prepares you for New York and playing in front of an audience is you're playing in front of a smaller audience. For me, we're playing in front of 4,000 or 5,000 people. So you have a sense of this interaction with fans, and certain things happen on the ice. You get a response, you get a reaction. So you have a feel for that. And you go from one building to another. Certain buildings really don't like you. Some buildings like you. And as far as that goes, and be able to manage playing the game and not getting distracted. So that's the beginning. And I did 4 years of that. And so by the time I got to New York, I felt comfortable. I can remember the first time I stepped on the ice at Madison Square Garden. I mean, it couldn't have been, bigger and louder is better for me. Oh, and wow. So I played to it. I was not nervous at all. I loved it.
See, that's pretty cool because a lot of people tell you that they're nervous, especially that first game. But
it's so intimidating.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's what you just said is what I was trying to say. I was not intimidated by it. Was I nervous? Of course, I'd be nervous, but it was a good nervous. So I wanted to be there. I was not afraid of being out there.
Yeah, and you can tell because look, you mentioned it was a different time, and it really was. And frankly, there's a lot about it that I miss now because the irony is that it's the players are bigger and faster, but it's less physical than it's ever been, I think. And I know there are people who are against fighting. I understood why it was part of the game and how it was part of the game. And, you weren't afraid to fight as well. And you were in there. I even have a quick clip of one of yours. Let's take a quick look at this. Now, there's a bunch here, so I got one where you threw a couple of rights. It's a quick one.
Okay. You got one that...
Sorry? What did you say?
You got one that I won.
Yeah, I wasn't going to take one where you lost, dude. Come on.
Yeah.
All right, so here's a quick one.
And they've been outscored 16-9. Now we got a fight.
Poland and Duguay. They got their sticks up, but Duguay got a couple of rights on Dave Poland.
Now, that's...
It's like John Bon Jovi out there.
Yeah, I had the big hair. I wasn't thinking Bon Jovi. Some say that he copied me. Don't know. We need to ask him that.
We will.
Yeah. That fight, what I remember about that fight is I was in a bad mood. I was Coach Herb Brooks was coach at the time, and he had put me on the third line, so I wasn't getting quality ice time. We're playing against the Flyers, and he threw me out there, and I think he knew I was in a bad mood. And so I go take the face-off against that was who in the heck was that? Prop? No, it wasn't Prop. I'll get his name here in a second.
Who you fought with? It was a Poulin, I think.
Poulin. There we go. So it was Poulin, and Poulin was a rookie American. Didn't do a lot of fighting, and so Brian Burke, who was the manager at the time, basically told him, "Listen, you need to get a little more involved. You got to command some respect out there." He says, "What do you mean?" "Well, you may have to get in a fight." Well, he pushes and shoves me as his first guy to fight. So, I gave it to him, and I ran into Burke later on. He laughs. He says, "I told him to go get in a fight, but I told him later, you need to be careful on who you pick on because a guy from Sudbury can fight." Right. So anyways, that's, fights are fights. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. You're on skates, you lose your balance sometimes, But the really good fighters are doing it often. There's a certain technique to it. And I thought, and I had to do it as an amateur. And so it kind of got me ready to play in the NHL because of my size and strength. You use it when you need to. Most of the time, my strategy was I will try to fight, other than Poulin, I will try to fight the toughest guys, break even with them, just kind of send a message to everybody else that I won't be intimidated.
Yeah, I watched a couple, especially during the Flyers, because they had some real animals on that team. And there was a couple of fights when I was looking for clips. One of the reasons why I pulled that too is some of them are just really hard to see, like it's taken from old VHS clips. But there's a few, like you could see if the guy's bigger, you could see your strategy was to get in there nice and tight and just grab and hold and try to just take them down, before they can land anything. It's a smart move. You don't want to get punched.
Yeah. And one other thing, and I'll share this, Laurie will understand. I knew that one day I would leave the game. And I didn't want to leave the game with my nose over here. And I didn't want to leave with a torn, forehead. And some of these fighters are really beat up. So my thought was, I was going to stand up, but was I willing to go toe-to-toe? You hit me, I hit you? No. So I would try to get them early. If I didn't, I would take them, just throw them down.
Mm. Yes, it's a smart move.
So that's why you can't really tell that I haven't many fights.
Well, did you do a lot of like trash talking on the ice as well? Like we had Sean Avery on, and obviously Sean reminds me of you in a lot of ways, and the fact not so much the trash talking, but just the way that he would energize the building every time he was on the ice. You had the same effect. And he was just talked about some of the stuff that he would say to other players is just insane. And I mean, when you started to become very popular, did other players try to use that against you and talk about, that you're handsome or,
You're like dating models. You're like pretty much king of New York. Like,
yeah. How do you rag on that?
Been giving you so much shit.
Well, let me answer this by the answers that I've gotten from players that I've run into in the last 10, 15 years. They would come up to me and say, you know what, Ron, for who you were, we give you a lot of respect because you stood up and fought. And so because of that, we knew that if we picked on you, we're going to have to fight you. And so I didn't have many guys kind of getting in my face and making stupid remarks because they knew that I would fight them. And they knew that I fought well enough that they didn't want to get beat by a pretty boy, right? I was considered a pretty boy. And so they didn't want to get beat by me. So the only stuff I had to deal with are fans. I mean, fans in Philadelphia, Boston, certain buildings back then, the glass was lower, much lower, so they can actually lean over. Warm-ups were the worst, especially for me in Philadelphia. I go in Philadelphia, I couldn't even go near the glass. I would skate in the middle of the ice because they were so bad. They would holler everything at me. And so the most abuse I got were fans, not from players.
And you were without a helmet, and Philadelphia is known for things raining down batteries and such from the upper level. So it's a smart move to stay away from that.
Yes.
You know. Can you before we go further? Can I get you to? Are you on a laptop? Can you center the image a little bit more? Ah, there we go. Much better. Okay. Yeah, as I'm watching, I'm like...
Well, you really want to see me, don't you?
Yeah, Ron. Are you kidding?
He's had a crush on you for how long now, Ron? 42 years?
Yeah.
Me? But, all right. So other than Philly, right? So when you get into the league and you're a rookie, are there things that the other players like? Are there pranks that they would throw on you? Or are there things that they would make you do as a rookie? And did you have a mentor that kind of took you under his wing? Because that's something that I would think every player would need.
Well, we had a good mix of older and younger. Phil Esposito was our leader. He was our team captain. And Espo was like a little kid. He liked to have fun. He liked hanging out with the young guys, especially when we went on the road. I think the worst thing that happened to me as far as getting picked on was initiation. Initiation happens. You're a rookie. You're going to get it. But you don't think about it. And what they do is they let you wait. They're not going to do it early in the first month. They'll have you wait. And so what they did to me, because by Christmas time, I'd become real popular. And so they decided, you know what, we're going to send them a nice Christmas present. And that's my son that just went back there. And so they decided they were going to get me just before I was going to go home for Christmas because I hadn't seen anyone my first year. And I'm going to see all my family and friends. And a couple of days before Christmas, they decided it's time to initiate Ron. And they hadn't initiated anyone. So every day you're coming off practice and you're wondering, all right, is it today?
Or maybe it'll never happen. Yeah, maybe they'll leave me alone.
Yeah, and the worst on the team as far as prankster was Nick Fotiu. He was the absolute worst. I mean, he was always up to something. I can give you an hour's worth of stories on the road where if you were his roommate, which I was, my goodness, you had to check the closet. You had to check everything for something, some booby trap somewhere. I mean, you had to sleep with one eye open. He was unbelievable. He was always up to something. Anyways, so I was coming off. So this one day in practice, Nick Fotiu says to me, listen, do you mind staying on after practice? We're going to take some shots. Everyone leaves. Take some shots. We're probably 10 minutes into it. He says, okay, that's enough. Well, what was happening in the dressing room is that the guys were getting the medical table ready for me to be strapped onto, and then initiation starts. So I have no idea. Everyone's pretty cool. And so as soon as I push the door open into the dressing room, Nick Fotiu from behind grabs me. He's got me in a headlock.
Oh, no.
Yeah, because he knows I'm strong enough. He doesn't get me from behind. I'm probably going to get away. Well, sure enough, long story short, 2 or 3 guys on you, you have to give in. You say, okay, this is just going to happen. So they put you on the table. You're laying back, and they strap your arms to the arms of the table and then your legs and essentially strip. Well, before that, they take all the clothes off you. You are lying there naked.
Strapped to a table with a room full of hockey players.
And you're thinking, oh, my God. This may be worse than getting my head shaved. So they got some really bad intentions for me. And so anyways, out comes the razor. Well, they blindfold you. So you can't see who's doing what, right? You can hear them talking, but you're not sure. And so anyways.
And before we go any further, I want to point out this is an uncensored podcast, so go for it.
Yeah. Well, we have Lori here, so out of respect for Lori, I'm not going to be too graphic on what exactly happened, other than getting shaved. Basically, they shave parts of your body. So parts of your body, half your chest, half your head, your legs, and then down in your private areas, they shave. And to make sure that you don't move or don't try to fight it, I don't know if I should say this.
That means you should.
Okay, back then there was these in the dressing room, old dressing pipes, right? Water pipes. So they threw a rope above. Out comes hanging, and they lasso your penis.
So you're not going to move.
You're not going to move.
So someone has the other end of it the whole time, or is it just? Yes.
If you try to fight, that's it. There is no moving, and so you have to submit, and not the way that you want to submit. So anyways, this goes on for about a good 30 minutes, and they're shaving and they're talking.
Oh,
they're
my
laughing,
God.
they're giggling.
30 minutes.
Oh, yeah, good 30 minutes. So, and I had the big hair.
Right.
And the young guys on the team, Dave Maloney, Donnie Murdoch, Gressner, had older guys, Carol Vadney, Phil Aspel, all those guys. And they just, they didn't want to. They wanted to make sure that I was going to look different when I left the dressing room. Well, sure enough, they shaved me so bad, I had to go to the barbershop and shave my head.
Oh, wow. And that's the one thing, like, that was your thing in a way, like,
well, if you go back and look at my rookie card, because the hockey card was taken after that, a month late in January. So if you look at my rookie card, I look like one of those guys from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And it was a profile. It was not a good look. It's my ugliest hockey card. So anyways, that's that story of my rookie card. You're wondering, why did I have big hair and all of a sudden my head shaved? Well, it's because Nick Fotiu and the boys, they really shaved me down. And so I got to go home looking that way.
Oh, boy.
I like they shaved you and not waxed you.
No, none of that. In fact, the blades, it's not like these blades were that sharp either. So you got blood. You got blood everywhere. You're cut. You are cut everywhere. And you just end up in the shower. And it just, for me, my hair was special to me because I was being recognized as, and all of a sudden I got no hair left. And so next game, so it's in the newspaper. It might have been Larry Brooks, who I work with now on my podcast. He might have written about what happened. So I think there's a couple of days that goes by. Now people are expecting to see me after initiation. We're at Madison Square Garden, go for warm-up, and I'm so disliking what I look like, I actually put a helmet on. Lori, I put a helmet on.
Wow.
I put a helmet on to go and warm up. So I skated around once, and all the fans are leaning over the glass, and they're all started yelling, "Take the helmet off!" So I took the helmet off, and that was it. It didn't last but 3 or 4 minutes. I played without a helmet that game. But the one thing I did do after I left the building that night is I went and bought like 3 or 4 hats. So there are pictures of me wearing hats.
Walking around.
Not long after that, I ended up scoring 3 goals one game. And of course, they threw all these hats down, and I had my own hat, and so to this day, it looks like the Broadway hat. I don't know if you know. A few years ago, the Rangers they had the Broadway hat. Mm-hmm. Well, I had the original Broadway hat.
Ah, see that? Yeah, it's like a fedora.
So I think it was 1978. 1978. If you go back, I think it was a game against Detroit. I scored 3 goals, and I used my own Broadway hat. So. It's funny how one story leads to another. I'll give you another one.
Yeah.
And so now I have this look of wearing hats, and I have a white hat. And I thought, what goes well with a white hat? Well, a white leather jacket. Okay, so now I have a white leather jacket. I have a white hat. And then that summer when I signed my contract, I thought I need to get something different as far as spending some money on a nice car. So everyone back there was getting a Corvette. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to be different. I'm going to get a Cadillac.
Yeah, all right.
I got this big Biarritz Cadillac, and guess what color?
White.
White. White with white leather. All right. So here's the story.
Like a
so
pimp.
One night, so most of the time I would go to studio and take a cab. But this one night I pull up Studio 54. Steve Rubell is at the door. You remember Steve Rubell was the owner. And I pull out with my car, white, and I wear a white leather jacket with a white hat. And I had someone park my car, go in. Well, 2 days later, Mark Beneke, I don't know if you remember Mark Beneke, Mark ran the door. Mark was the guy that would tell people come in or not come in. He ended up being a good friend of mine because he's a big hockey fan. So Mark comes to me a couple of days, says, Mark, Ron, I have to share something with you. He says, Steve, you know how picky he is or not picky. He says, he doesn't like you coming in here looking like a pimp. and essentially, that's what I look like.
Right.
So it's kind of funny how one thing led to another. And so anyways.
Wow, I like that you could your entry to Studio 54 was really based on
like
what you wore.
So on point for Studio 54.
Yeah.
I know, but he didn't want me looking like the way I did because everyone else is in costumes.
Yeah, Bianca Jagger is on a horse on a dance floor.
Dancing with me.
Yeah, see that? But
No, I mean it, Lori. I mean it.
Oh, I believe you.
Now, fashion's always been a part, Ron, in just your career. Even, broadcast, you always look sharp, the best suits. Even right now, you're wearing an awesome shirt making me look bad. But, that's always...
I was going to ask you, what's the dress code for your shirt? This is a Robert Graham shirt. and I used to wear all these shirts when I was on the air. So anyways, keep going.
So, I have to bring up this clip, and you know where this is going. This is another, one of the things that brought you even more to the forefront in New York at the time. You guys did a commercial for Sassoon jeans at the time. And I'm going to play this now because it's just... knowing what I know about, especially Espo and stuff like that, it's just so funny to watch it now and see. So here's this Sassoon commercial that you guys did. Now that can't go over big in Philly.
Yeah, well, we had to deal with that in Philly. Ooh la la, right?
Right. Well,
you have no idea. It was ooh la la. It was all the time. And so when I do my cameos nowadays, that's how I end my cameos. Especially when I'm talking to a woman, I go ooh la la.
Well, that's great. Actually, let's just Ron does cameos. You can go to cameo.com/1010 and Ron will do a cameo personal message for anyone in your family, any friends, birthdays, holidays, somebody who needs a pick-me-up. Ron was telling us beforehand how much he loves to do those, so I strongly recommend you go to cameo.com and get one from Ron because it's just a very cool thing to be able to bring that, especially to a Ranger fan or someone who grew up watching Ron.
And he has a 5-star review I just saw.
Wow, look at that. That's ooh la la. That's where that's coming from.
Rob, I would have gotten you that if we didn't have Ron here right now.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, though, is, that was also used as a positive because I was at a game where you scored 2 goals. And in the blue seats, we were chanting ooh la la, Duguay over and over and over again. So it was used as a positive in New York. But
yeah, in New York it was. Yeah, in fact, they would all together start the ooh la la, depending on whether we're winning it or not.
Right,
New York, we got to be winning. So if you're winning, everything's great. And so, for us, it was we enjoyed doing things together as teammates, and that was just another opportunity to spend a couple of days doing the commercial. Of course, Espo, you could tell how happy he is. Yeah. And so we would do things, and not many opportunities back then to represent product. As hockey was not on the A list, it was always baseball, football, and so for us to get anything we were very pleased with it. But a couple of things that I've done is kind of stuck around, especially, I don't know if you have it coming around the corner here, but I did Hockey Sock Rock, this song.
No, I spared you that. I chose one.
Alan Thicke wrote, right? I read.
The what?
Alan Thicke wrote that, right?
He did, yes. So Alan was a friend. Well, he's Canadian, so he loves hockey, and he was a good friend with Espo. And he, one of his kids, I don't think it's Robin, who had juvenile diabetes, and so he wanted to bring awareness to it, raise some funds, and he thought, what better way to maybe do a song, produce it, and let's see what happens. So he approached Espo about it. He says, I wrote this song, Espo, and it's not that complicated. I think you can do it. And Espo, I don't think I can do it. So this is at a dinner table. And so Alan knew Phil well enough to know that he's going to get the bottle of whiskey out. And so by the end of the night, Espo said, let me see that. So Phil starts to look at, Hockey Sock Rock. I'm not even remember the words. Yeah. But Espo says, you know what? I think I can do this. And so sure enough, he committed from that. He says, I'm going to need a team. I'm going to need Dukes. and then, of course, JD and Davey Maloney. And so we recorded the song. It was, we did it. I remember going to California, it was in the off season. And we went to the studio. And for us, just that whole experience of pretending we're rock stars, it was a lot of fun. So we did that. And we sold, I think, about 90,000 records in Canada.
Wow.
And so, And so, and to this day, people like to play it, like to show it. And for me, we got, it's gold and then what? Platinum? Is that the order?
Gold and platinum. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we got a platinum record out of it.
That's impressive, man.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I don't have it.
Who's got it?
Well, you want to hear the story?
Sure. Why not?
How much time do we have?
We got time. Don't worry.
There's a story.
Score is still 0-0, so you can go.
No, the Rangers scored 1-0 right now.
There you go. It's funny. I didn't realize we booked this at the same time as a game, so Ron's got it on, and thankfully he's not more.
Well, the thing is, they're playing at 6:00, which they never play at 6, and so which is fine. I can kind of see them over there, and I'll get back to them. But anyways, I lost. So a year later, maybe, I don't know how much long, maybe a year later, we're in LA and we're there with Alan Thicke. She says, Alan had framed these platinum records. Beautiful. Our name's on it, presents it to us at an LA Kings game. And so I get it. But during that game, we're sitting on the bench, and this is old school stuff. I mean, I look over and Espo's sitting there. He gets a tap on the shoulder, and the trainer. This is during the game. Trainer gives him a note, right? Trainer, and so he looks at the note during the game. Looking at the note, he goes, "Hey, dudes, this is for you." So he hands it to me, and I look, and there's this woman behind, about 3 rows back, wants to meet me after the game. Holly wants to meet you after the game. This is all going on during the game. I mean, coaches are like, yeah, whatever. and she says, meet you upstairs. So I, hurry. First of all, I turn around. I'm like, oh, wow, she's hot.
Yeah, you have to vet it first. It's smart.
Yeah. And so now, go upstairs. I got my platinum record. I'm good to go. And I'm going to meet her. And so I'm looking at the last name, and Espo says, do you know who that is? I said, no. Hallstrom. Holly Hallstrom. I said, no. She said, that's the lady from Price is Right.
Oh, wow.
She's one of the ladies from The Price is Right.
No
I think
way.
Holly Hallstrom. Yeah. I said, wow. So now the whole team knows, right? So now we're all going upstairs. They all want to go see her. And sure enough, it's her. I mean, she's looking pretty. Mm-hmm. And so she says, come on, we're going out. I said, okay, we're going out. And I'm going to give you the short version.
Okay. Fair enough.
All right. So by 6 a.m, I said, I got to get back because by 7, the bus is leaving. So we go back to the hotel. We're staying at the Marriott at the airport. And so I figured, let's go have breakfast. And I'm not myself. I'd been up all night. It was a good night. And was sitting there having breakfast. And so we say our goodbyes. I get on the bus. I get on the plane. I realize, oh, my God, I left it in the coffee shop at the Marriott.
Somebody's got it. Somebody's got it.
Someone has it. I keep checking. Somewhere's going to show up. Why would someone want to keep that with my name on it? Right. So that's the story. I had it for like a half a night, and but I should just go and get another one. Anyways,
were there ever times that I know that you guys were athletes, but at the same time, I know there was a lot of partying too, especially after games. Did you ever have to play a game hungover, or did you ever maybe even drunk for that matter for what it's worth?
Did we have to play hungover? Oh, wow. I mean, half the league was hungover all the time.
See,
oh, yeah. There would be times where I'd be in front of the net, fighting some defenseman, and then the whistle would blow, and I'm like, oh, my God, get a mint. Some big defenseman, you could tell he'd been out all night. It was like, oh, wow, that's freaking awful. Oh, yeah. Like, you asked the guys back then, going on a road was a blast because the married guys would want to go on a road because they can hang out with the single guys. And it wasn't like the night before we're going to be in by 10 and we're not going to do anything. Oh, no. There'll be a curfew, maybe a curfew, but we're still going out, and we all had our favorite places to go to. We wouldn't run into guys from the other team, seldom, but we just love being together. Like the team that went to the Stanley Cup Finals, we had so much fun. And one of the big reasons why we did go so far, we were like brothers. I mean, we partied hard and we played hard. And were we hungover? Absolutely. But, the guys would say, play with guilt. Play with guilt. and we knew that the coaches knew, right? And so because the coaches knew, we had to play hard just so they wouldn't say, okay, next time we come to LA, you guys are going to have a curfew. Oh, no. We'll win tonight, coach. It's all good.
Right.
Were people throwing up on the ice?
No, it wouldn't be that bad. They'd wait till they get to the dressing room.
But they would. So I want to actually talk a little bit about, you had rivals. You mentioned seeing people from the other team. Have you, did you ever have rivalries with guys where you'd get into fights and stuff and then see them out later and just have drinks with them like nothing ever happened? Or was it actually like, let's use the Islanders or the Flyers, two teams that, were really hated rivals?
Yeah. Well, let me just answer you. The home teams knew not to go to certain bars because it was the bars for the away teams. Gotcha. A lot of those were possibly near the arena or near the hotel or in the hotel. They sort of knew that the teams, guys from out of town, are going to be there, and they wouldn't go there. A lot of guys would go home with their wives from the other team. But seldom would you see a player, because I would never want to go in the bar where I knew I'd run in, like in New York. Well, of course, where I'm going, no one's going. But because they all wanted, that's the thing. And I would get, like in warm-up in New York, hey, Dukes, can you get us in the studio tonight? Well, you better give me a little bit of space out here, and you tell your boys not to bother me.
Right, and I'll see what I can do. Yeah, so like you were a staple in that way too, and it kind of brings me back to playing for Herb Brooks. So, for those of you who are listening who don't know, of course, if you're an American, how do you not? Herb Brooks was the coach of the 1980 U.S. Olympic team, notoriously a very tough coach to play for. And I think your first season, you played for Brooksy for 2 years, right?
I did, yeah.
And your first season, you put up 40 goals with him. Like I did. You did really well. But you kind of had a falling out with him too. Is that the case? Like, was he a tougher than normal? Do you think he took that out on you a little bit because you were popular outside the ice, off the ice and outside the game?
Well, I wish I would have been able to have that conversation with him to find out exactly what he was thinking. I know in my first year, I showed up to training camp after playing in the Canada Cup, which was playing for your country in this world tournament. I went to camp there, made the team. So by the time I got to training camp with the Rangers, most of the training camp was over with. I got there in great shape with a lot of confidence. I made the toughest, the best team in the world. And so I get to New York. I have Herb Brooks. I get to introduce her for the first time. And he introduced me to Mark Pavelich. Here's your sentiment. And he didn't really give me much instruction other than I got an idea for the type of game he wanted to play. which was stay in motion. Stay in motion. We're not going to be north and south type team, because I saw how he had his team play when they won the gold medal. So I thought, wow, this is right up my alley. I don't have to stop. I got to just keep moving. And he gave me the player that knew how to play that system. So Pav and I, we could have had a donkey on our left side. It couldn't have mattered, because him and I, we just managed the puck, and I scored 40 goals. It was great. Well, during that season, I'm having a whole lot of fun. And you're familiar with the New York Post at page 6. I would end up in page 6, and I know Herbie, who coached and managed college players, he had his hands on them. He had control over them. And so all of a sudden now he's dealing with men, celebrity men in New York City. I think that was a learning curve for him. And so I had no issues with him until the second season. I come to training camp out of shape because I had a great year and things were going well. And for whatever reason, I decided to party a lot more that summer. And so I got to camp, and he could tell I was visibly not in great shape. And so I felt like he took that as an opportunity for him to kind of apply his toughness on me. And because he didn't even come to me and talk to me, he had another player come. He had Nick Fatio come and talk to me and say, listen, Herb knows you're out of shape, and don't think that just because you scored 40 goals, blah, blah, blah. So sure enough, I started to see I'm struggling a little bit. Next thing you know, I'm not playing with Pavlich. I'm not playing with Pavlich. He took him away from me. And essentially, when you look at my numbers that year, I think I scored 19 goals. So I went from 40 to 19. I was essentially on the third line. And that's when I said to you earlier, Poulin, when I fought Poulin, that was my second year with him. I was not in a good mood. And so, so then that summer, he was able to show Craig Patrick, who was the manager, that, listen, we let's move this guy, because for whatever reason, he thinks that I'm not good for the team. Meanwhile, I got along with everybody. That was a lot of fun. I had no issues. It's just that I don't know what he was thinking. But here's the thing with Herb Brooks. When my career was over, I was sitting at home. I was in California, and the phone rings one afternoon. And it's Herb Brooks. He goes, Ron? I go, yeah. He goes, I just want to let you know that I think that you had a wonderful career. Keep your head up. You should be very proud. I can remember being on the other end, and I was blank. I did not know what to say to him. I just accepted what he said. And to this day, it is one of my biggest regrets that I didn't have a conversation with him. Like, just really say, hey, Herb, I really appreciate this, but like, what happened? Like, why did you feel like you had to let me go? Because I go to Detroit. I have 3 great years. I'm over a point a game.
Yeah, and then it killed us. It killed us.
I was killing it there. And but a part of me kind of understood. I didn't mind it because I was on a fast train. I was going fast. And so going to Detroit really woke me up to what's really important, and that was to be a good hockey player. So it was good and bad. Anyway, so yeah, I never got in an argument with her. Never, ever. We never had an argument.
It's odd that he had Nikki speak to you instead of the Espo, which is odd too.
I'm just trying to think. Was Espo Espo might have been retired by then, I think.
Oh, maybe. Yeah,
he might have been retired. He had gone up and doing television. So he used Nick, because Nick was one. He knew that we were close, and it was right in training camp. So anyway, so that's what happened.
Yeah, and you mentioned being moved to the third line. It is kind of a chicken and egg kind of thing, because if you're not playing with the top players, you're not going to produce, and if they want you to produce, it's almost sometimes what I get frustrated with when you get these rookies, that come into the league that have so much talent, and then they put him on the fourth line. Like, of course he's not going to score a bunch of goals if he's playing with grinders. That's kind of how that goes. But to mention Pavlich, I know he just passed away. My condolences. I know he's a friend of yours as well. And here's even, I looked this picture up, but unfortunately there's no number on the side, but my friend Rob lent me a Pavlich jersey, and that's me back in the day wearing a Mark Pavlich jersey, and my friend Rob lent me. So, I know what an important player he was to the team and how he contributed to your success too. So my condolences on that loss.
Yeah, it was. It's a very sad story with Pav. He had his issues. Very quiet guy, and at the end of his career, he ended up going back to Minnesota and just wanted to be private with his wife. He bought a cabin in the woods, liked to hunt fish, very secluded. And I don't know all the details, but I think one thing led to another. Might have been got into too much drinking, and he had concussion syndrome. So, with the little guy that he was, and he played hard, I think he took a lot of hits to the head. And so not treated properly, and if you're always waking up in the morning not feeling happy, then you start taking things. And so it just kind of grew into a little bit of a monster where he got in an argument with a buddy. Next thing you know, he taps him over the head with a crowbar, and then he's off to jail. And now he's in jail. Things are much worse. And so one thing, it just escalated to really bad. Then he was in treatment, and then in treatment, they found him dead. Now, we don't know exactly what happened, but I know that Barry Beck was communicating with him a lot, and I think he was just severely depressed.
Yeah, and that happened to a lot of players, especially playing without helmets. And, there are players that have, committed suicide or overdosed and all of these things that, clearly had signs of concussion syndrome, and it's something that, the league is trying to address. But in any of these sports, there's only so much you can do. I mean, they're so physical, and hockey's such a physical game. So, it's a sad story for sure.
Yeah, if you want to dig into it a little bit more, Danny Carcillo, whom I just had on my show.
Sure, fun guy.
Yeah. So have you ever interviewed Dan? Or
No, I'd love to, though. He was a crazy dude, too. He's in the Avery mold for sure.
Yeah. So he's really pushing because he's had to go through it. He's went through a tough time. And so he's a good conversation because he's at the forefront of wanting to help the players, alumni, not just in hockey, but others. So he's part of a wellness program that's created the CBD that helps balance the brain and that sort of thing. But he would be a good interview if you want to get into that category of concussions, athletes, because there's many. Sure. I can't imagine these cage fighters, what they're going to be like in 5 or 10 years, because you cannot take a lot of hits to the head where you're not going to have, because our brains are soft, and you have a protection there, but after you get hit so many times, the balance is off. Mm-hmm. Anyways, he'd be good if you want to talk about that category.
Yeah, it's just something that I always think about with, when I see these guys without helmets, and even back when you saw goalies who didn't wear helmets, which is just absolutely insane to me. But I know you don't have too much time left. But
wait, Ron, you have to tell us about your night with Cher.
You know what? Thank you, Lori.
We're just amongst us boys here.
Yeah. Well, it's one of the nights at Studio 54, like a regular night at Studio 54. And I met Cher, and I met Cher through one of her friends. As soon as you meet Andy Warhol, you meet the whole crew.
Yeah. Liza
Minnelli, Elizabeth Taylor, Halston.
Legends.
You name it. Yeah, well, legendary.
Liza introduced you to Cher, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, because I can remember now. There's a lot of things I do not remember. I don't retain things. My brain doesn't retain things unless it's really, really, really important to me, or really makes me happy, or it's maybe hurtful. Everything else in between, my brain says, we don't keep this. We live in today. But I will never forget standing by the dance floor, and I have this, and I'm looking, I'm like, that looks like Liza Minnelli. And I'm looking around. She looks like she's pointing at me. Sure enough, she was. So she's doing this to me as I walk over. And as I'm walking over, I can hear she turns to her husband and says, hey, come on over and meet Ron Duguay. Again, as I'm closer, I'm like, oh my God, she knows Ron Duguay. And I've never seen at her game. But that had to do with Andy Warhol and the cover, because I had never met her before. She's bringing me over, right? How cool is that?
That's crazy.
And so we're talking for a few minutes, and I grew up watching Liza Minnelli. And then sure enough, she looks to her right, she calls over, and Cher's over to the right, she calls her over. And so Cher comes over, says, "Hey, I want you to meet Ron." So we meet, and Cher, being Cher, says right away, "Do you dance?" I said, "Yeah." So he grabs me by the arm, and so we're on the dance floor. And I think if you Google me and Cher, you'll see us dancing on the dance floor. And so then that's all done. We go back and sit, and Liza says to the two of us, "Why don't you guys come back to my place? We're going to go have some drinks." I'm like, oh my God. I'm dancing with Cher. I'm talking to Liza. I'm like 23. I'm a baby.
Yeah.
And now I'm going back to her place. So okay, Cher says, "Come on, we're going to go now." I'm like, okay, I'm just following her like a puppy. And so we end up at Liza Minnelli's lobby. We're sitting there, and 30 minutes goes by. And Cher's like, "Where in the F is she?" And I'm like, she said, "If she's not here in the next 2 minutes, we're leaving." I'm thinking, what? I want to go up.
Yeah, right.
And sure enough, she does. She says, "No, we've waited long enough." I said, "Let's go." And I'm like, "Where are we going?" "Just come with me." Okay, like a little puppy. Here we go. Get in the car. And don't tell me where we were. It's somewhere in Midtown. I can remember being in the cab. We stop in this beautiful townhouse. And I pay the cabbie, walk out the door, and Cher's about to open the door of this beautiful townhouse. And as before she opens up the door, she looks back at me. She says, "Just so you know, I don't beep, beep, beep on the first date, on the first night." Okay?
There's 3 beeps in there, Ron.
And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I'm not thinking anything. All I'm thinking, I'm just following you. So now I guess I've been given instructions. I'm pretty good at following instructions.
Right.
And so now I walk into this place. I'm looking, it's beautiful, beautiful townhouse. So I'm walking around. Next thing you know, there's a couple gold records on the wall. And it's not hers. It's Kiss.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I'm like, what are these doing here? "Well, I still have his key." "Whose key?" "Well, it's Gene Simmons' house."
Oh, wow. Jesus.
I'm like, what? Okay. She says, "Yeah, we used to go." And I guess I was the guy before. He was the guy before. And so now things are getting weird. I got instructions at the front door. Now I'm in Gene Simmons' house.
Getting weird.
Yeah. And I got to play tomorrow. Well, next thing you know, because she's giving me the instructions, I'm trying to follow, but we're sitting in his bed. I'm like, okay, where are we going with this?
Right.
I'm 23. She's 36. And next thing you know, we're laying down. I'm like, all right.
There you
Are
go.
the rules?
She had you wrapped around her finger.
Yeah. So anyways, 2:00 came around, and I told Lisa, I got to go. I got to play tomorrow. So I scooted out of there. I'm like, oh my God, that was exciting, different. And the boys are going to love this story in the morning.
So she did change the rules for you last minute.
We're not going to get into that because it went on for a while. This thing went on for about in New York City. She had just gotten there. And I think she was she doing a Broadway play? She was working. She was going to be there for a while. And a few people came to me and said, "Look at Ron. She's going to want to box you in." "What do you mean?" "She loves young men, and she's going to want to box you in. Like, you know how you're seeing these other women right now? Like, I'm not going to name names, but you're going to have to give all that up if you." And I'm like, oh no, I'm having way too much fun. And so so there's a whole series of things that happened for about another 5 weeks that we'll talk about it some other time.
Okay. Yeah, we'll do a special Cher episode.
Yeah, but very sweet. Listen, the woman is very unique, very different. Had I been much older, that would have been awesome. But I was young, and I didn't want to disrespect her. I didn't want to insult her. I didn't want to commit to anything. So the best thing for me was to run and hide.
Right. It was smart.
But how exciting for a 23-year-old hockey player.
I know.
Liza Minnelli introduce you to Cher.
Yeah.
Like, that's crazy. Go to Gene Simmons' house.
Yeah. No, I know. Well, you had mentioned Bianca Jagger before. And We won't talk about that now. Let's talk hockey.
All right. I think we have to have a couple of weeks with you.
I know. We weren't kidding about this lasting 6 hours.
Well, I was on the plane. Maybe, I don't know, before COVID, and there was a documentary in Halston. And I'd met him, so I'm looking at this, and I'm like, and they showed his house in Manhattan. I'm like, wait a minute, I've been there. I'm like, I've been there, and because I was there with Liza Minnelli had invited. She had been staying at his house. She had invited me over to his house. And I'm like, oh my God, I remember I was sitting right there. So. Yeah, I've experienced a lot.
That's good, man. Look, hey, you know what? It's the life everybody dreams of having, especially at that age, man. So, it's great that you were able to do that,
I can see that the Penguins tied and Ron's getting a little stressed.
yeah, they did tie. well, I gotta go help them. Give them some
feel your energy right now.
Yeah, well, then we're gonna let you go, but there's just one other thing that I want to show you really quick. Is that about 10 years ago, I was working in Manhattan, and I went out for my lunch break, and you were there buying fruit, and I saw you there, and I didn't want to bother you, but
How long ago?
About 10 years ago, I would say.
Okay, Midtown?
Yeah, Midtown, probably around 23rd Street, something like that, maybe.
Yeah.
So I snuck a photo of it, and from time to time, I send it to my friends and say, it doesn't matter what kind of day you're...
Wait a minute. You snuck like a creepy photo?
I snuck a creepy photo.
And I'm going to show right.
And I'm going to show it to you, and I'm going to tell you the story behind it. Is from time to time, I just send it to my group of friends and said, have a good day. Here's Ron Duguay buying fruit. And that's the photo.
Oh, yeah.
So look how close you were to him, Rob.
You know what? I didn't want to bother the guy, but I was like, at the same time, I'm a fan. So, I don't want to be like, hey. So the question I have for you is, what did you buy, Ron?
I'm going to believe, because I'm a big believer an apple a day keeps the doctor away.
There you go.
So I actually have 2 apples a day, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. When I have my tea, I drink a lot of green tea in the morning and the afternoon. And so after I'm green tea, I have an apple. So I'm going to believe I was buying apples.
All right. So that's the story. So now I have that closed loop in my life.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I want everyone to go and check out, listen, there's a great podcast called Up in the Blue Seats that Ron hosts. And, you mentioned that Brooksy from the Post is on it as well, who I've always respected his honesty and opinions on things. And you have a lot of great guests, one after another as well. So everyone should check that show out.
No. Well, thank you. Good talking with you guys.
Same here. And once again, check out, you can also do a Cameo, cameo.com/1010. Get a cameo done by Ron and follow him on Twitter, Ron Duguay, 10 on Twitter as well. He posts some great stuff, shares some old memories all the time as well. Ron, I cannot thank you enough for joining us. It was a great time.
Thank you, Ron.
So many stories that we still have to get to the bottom of, but we can always do another one.
This was really fun.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you for listening to The Hole. I am Rob Sprans.
I'm Lori Levine.